Hi, I'm Tinny from Medieval Design, and today I want to talk about the physics of the Chinese 7x10 lathe. There's got to be a gazillion of these things around. I've been on YouTube and everybody's got one of these things. People are doing all kinds of neat stuff with them. So, since I've purchased and worn out 5 of these in a commercial environment, I want to chime in on some of the things I've seen and really need to be pointed out. So, let's get to it. When I first purchased one of these, one of my questions was, why is this chuck doesn't have a very wide diameter? It's really small and unusually long. I was thinking that it would be a much better chuck if they made it shorter and much bigger around. Then they could have put bigger jaws in it and you'd be able to grasp much larger stuff. So after I had it a few years, I found out I answered my own question. And here's how, in my opinion, just based on working with these lathes, the reason why they made the chuck that way was the closer the mass is to the center point, the less speed it's traveling slower in feet per second. Same RPM, but feet per second. So this chuck has less inertia than one that was, say, 3 times as big around, but only like an inch thick. Because the one that's 3 times as big around, the mass would be further from the center and would have more inertia. Yeah, whatever. What's that about? Okay, now we get down to the finer points. If you turn this lathe on and you start spinning the chuck, there's inertia on that chuck. Now if you flip this switch, you change the direction of it just like that. Okay, yes, so what? Okay. That's fine spinning it at 50 RPMs, but when this is spinning fast like that, it has an enormous amount of inertia. And if the chuck was bigger, the inertia would be even larger. Now, when this is spinning fast, this chuck is so small that if you were unfortunate enough to change directions on this switch, go from forward to reverse while it was spinning wide open, believe it or not, it wouldn't cause any problem at all. But, let me give you the next point of this. Unfortunately for me, I found out the hard way that when you put big objects in the chuck, like a die, this weighs probably 8-10 pounds. When you put something this big in the chuck and then spin it fast, now you've really got some inertia built up, some real mass spinning at high speed. Then, if something goes wrong, and that inertia is applied suddenly to the drivetrain, well, let me show you what happens. Okay, this is the lesser of the 2 scenarios. This is if you're lucky what happens. There's a motor in the back down low on this. It's about that big around and that long, but it's a very strong motor. And it's run by a speed controller up here that puts out a square wave. So that motor is getting a pulse. A very efficient way to run a motor. Very strong and very easy to change the speed by changing the pulse. Now that motor has a cog gear on it. It's actually, I think, a timing gear they call them, and a timing belt. Okay, and that's fine. But when you do the scenario I just talked about, where you suddenly stop the motor or change directions, this gear will jump on this belt, and it'll do one of 2 things. It'll either take one or two teeth off of the belt, or it'll take 1 or 2 teeth off of the gear, or both. And all you'll hear is just a click, click. No big deal. You won't think anything about it. When you start it back up, it'll be fine. But sometime when you're using it, turning something where you're putting a fair amount of strain on the drivetrain, if you start turning every now and then, you'll click, 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 click. That's those teeth going around, and when they get to where the teeth are missing, you'll click, and it'll jump again, and it'll slowly take another tooth off, and I think you can see where this is going. I've got something I saved that the teeth are all gone right off them, wears them right out. Not too big a deal. You can buy these online. There's a special place to buy them, and in order to put one on, you have to take this case off, and you have to pull the motor out of the back and pull some gears off and some other stuff. It's not too bad to do. It takes maybe an hour, and put it on. The biggest problem is that in order to get the motor off, you have to remove the electronics. And that in itself shouldn't be a big deal except for one factor. On all the ones I've got, the wires are so short that when you go to pull the box off, you can hardly get the box off far enough to look down at the wires before they unplug, because they put very short wires on them. So if you do get it out, get this box off, move it out very slowly and look down and write your color codes down and everything, your wiring diagram, because a lot of them are wired different, and even some of the manuals don't give you the wiring correctly. So once you get the box off, then you got to take the motor out. And the motor's on a really funky mount. It's just like two screws on a round surface. Really tough to get it back together. I can't even tell you how to do it other than trial and error. So that's the lesser scenario. Now let's do the other scenario. Okay, these are two gears that's inside. Let me see if I can get them up here so the camera can see them. Two gears that are in the drivetrain. That would be low, and that would be high, back and forth. Okay, remember these two gears, which are made out of a fairly hard plastic, a little brittle. Now, those are shifted by a lever back here from high to low. That's high, that's low. Okay. Now, here's the problem with those two gears. If it doesn't take the belt off, it may shatter those gears. I've had it happen 3 times. Those gears are brittle and it'll shatter them. And when it happens, sometimes it'll just take off a tooth or something. When you start it up, it'll click, 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 click. In fact, I've got one over here that sounds like that. Let's start it up and listen to it real quick. Like, you'll hear a light clicking sound. Hear that? That's a mixing tooth, maybe 2 teeth. Okay, no big deal, change the gears. Okay, now let's get down to the meat of it. Okay, you've got the bed of your machine. That's the main part that everything bolts to. And this is the head. And this head has to be in alignment this way and this way, every way with the bed. Absolutely perfect. That's where the accuracy of the lathe comes from. So it's scraped in and put in absolutely perfect. The gears that I just showed you are inside of the head, and this head has a lot of stuff inside of it. So in order to get those gears out, you have to take the electronics off, take the back off, take all your drive gears off, take your high-low range off, take your levers off the back, remove your motor, take the worm gear out here, take this off, the compound rest, flip it upside down, and there's 4 large Allen heads that you have to take out, and then this head comes off. Once you get this head off, you got to remove the chuck, and there's 2 shafts in there. One has 1 gear on it, one has the other gear in it. They're all running in bearings. And you have to press these shafts out, and the gears are on keyways. Slide those gears off, put the new ones on, and then press the shafts back on, and then put it all back together. That's like, for a novice, that's like a 4-hour project. For me, it'd probably be 2 hours. And the chances of getting it all back together, getting this headline back up with a bed, getting the electronics back on, getting the funky motor mounted back up, and getting all these gears in the right place, 2 chances of that, slim and none. And that's if you can find a place that sells the gears. Now, if you do run into that situation, you can buy steel gears. I highly recommend that if you're going to do this, buy steel gears. They're like $75 more, but they're well worth it. And second off, when you mount those, there's a lever back here that shifts them, and there's a little arm on it with a set screw in it. Loctite the set screw, because I had to take this apart once because the set screw fell out. And that's in a nutshell. That's what you can run into by spinning large objects in this chuck. And if you do it on a daily basis, you say, well, I'm not going to. Well, it's just a matter of time. Trust me. If you're doing it day in and day out, you will clean the gears out. I've done it on virtually every one of these lathes over time. It's just a 2% error, human error. It will happen. And so when I see people spinning big stuff in them, I just wince. The second thing is, if you try to take too deep a cut, or if you're turning something big that's far from center and you try to turn it and it stalls it, it's just a matter of time before you take some teeth off the drive belt and off that gear too. These are not made for big objects or heavy objects. You can do it and you'll get away with it a few times, but in the end you will destroy the lathe. I have done it many, many times, and I've got boxes of parts where I rebuilt them. So I'm kind of wincing. On the other hand, I had one of these lathes that I was turning 5/16 brass with, making little hammers, and I ran it like every day for a year and never had any problem with it at all. But it was all little stuff, and that's what they're good at. And that's what I use this one for, is turning little things, like the tops for the M2s and facing off up to 2 inch, nothing any bigger. And even at 2 inch, you got to be careful. You can jump a belt. So there you go. I hope I helped somebody out that has one of these lathes. I'm Tinny from Mini Bull Design. Get out and hike, take a friend, enjoy the great outdoors, enjoy your little 7x10 mini lathe, and more important than anything, try to have some fun on your lathe, with a stove, cook a meal, anything. Get out and go for a walk. Just have some fun, and try to have a really great day. Bye-bye.